I don't think it hurt. I don't think so. I heard Imam Kareem telling his wife, Aisha, that she was sweet the other day. Kareem had 2 children, a son named Yusuf and a daughter named Amina. His younger brother, Ibrahim, had 1 son named Khalid. The 3 children grew up together so closely that it was difficult to distinguish who belonged to whom. They prayed together, attended madrasa classes together, and treated each other like siblings, not just cousins. Among the 3 children, the bond between Amina and Khalid stood out the most. Born just a few weeks apart, people often thought they were twins. Wherever Amina went, Khalid was always nearby. It was as if they couldn't be separated. They shared everything. Amina and Khalid loved the same books, helped each other memorize verses from the Quran, and spent most of their free time together. If Khalid struggled with a Quranic verse or a hadith, Amina would always help him. And when Amina felt down, Khalid would cheer her up with light jokes or comforting words. Their friendship was something pure, special, and unbreakable. As Amina and Khalid grew into teenagers, changes became more noticeable in both of them. Amina started to blossom with grace, her demeanor becoming more mature, while Khalid's voice deepened, and he began to take on more responsibilities at the mosque, assisting his father and uncle with community tasks. Despite these changes, their bond remained innocent and grounded in years of trust and friendship. One evening, as Kareem and his wife Aisha sat in their room, their soft laughter could be heard through the quiet house. The sound caught Amina's attention as she lay in her room, reflecting on her day. Curiosity got the better of her. Why did her parents laugh so much at night, and what was the strange muffled sound that always followed? Unable to resist, Amina tiptoed toward her parents' door. She stood silently outside, her heart racing, and cautiously pushed the door open just a little to peek inside. What she saw puzzled her teenage mind. Her parents were sitting close to each other, whispering and laughing softly, their movements unfamiliar. Amina stood frozen with curiosity for a moment. She didn't understand what she was seeing. Questions flooded her mind. What were they doing? Why did they seem so happy? She quietly retreated to her room, her thoughts swirling as she tried to make sense of what she had just witnessed. The next day, Amina couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. The image replayed in her mind, stirring her curiosity even more. Later, when she and Khalid were alone after madrasa, Amina leaned in and whispered, "Khalid, last night, I saw my parents doing something strange." Khalid raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean strange?" she asked. Amina explained what she had seen, describing her parents' closeness and the quiet laughter. Khalid chuckled and said, "Oh, that's just grown-up stuff, Amina." Amina frowned in surprise. "You know about this?" she asked. Khalid nodded. "Yes, I've seen my parents act like that too. It's just what adults do. It's not a big deal." Amina's curiosity grew stronger. "Tell me more," she said eagerly. Khalid shook his head. "No, Amina, it's not something we talk about. Adults have their way of expressing things, and it's not for us to question." But Amina wasn't satisfied with Khalid's response. "If you've seen it, why can't I know about it? We're the same age," she argued. Khalid tried to brush it off, saying it wasn't appropriate, but Amina kept pestering him. Eventually, Khalid hesitated and admitted, "I've seen something like that online too." This only fueled Amina's curiosity. "Show me," she insisted. At first, Khalid refused. "No, Amina, it's not something you should see. I regret even watching it myself. It made me feel strange and unsettled." But Amina wouldn't let it go. She pressed him over and over until one afternoon, when the adults were away at the mosque, Khalid finally gave in. "Okay, fine," he said reluctantly. He picked up his phone, opened a video, and handed it to her. At first, Amina felt confused and uncomfortable. The video showed things she didn't understand, and the sounds were strange to her. But despite her discomfort, she kept watching, unable to look away. Khalid sat beside her, equally unsure of what they were doing. As they watched, something changed. Deep inside, they felt a shift. An invisible line was crossed. Their innocent bond, built on years of friendship and trust, was being affected in a way neither of them fully understood. The video left a mark on both of them, a discomfort they couldn't explain, and an unease that lingered long after the screen had gone dark. Mrs. Fatima, Khalid's mother, returned home earlier than expected. She called out from the sitting room, "Khalid, have you cleaned the sitting room like I asked?" "Yes, Mama," Khalid replied, trying to sound calm. Amina and Khalid froze. They were shocked to hear her voice. They hadn't realized an adult was back in the house. Panic set in as they looked at each other, knowing they had been doing something they shouldn't have. Quickly, Khalid helped Amina sneak out of his room through the back door. As she left, they both felt uneasy. There was a heavy feeling in their hearts, as if they had crossed a line they couldn't step back over. Amina had never had to sneak around in the house before, and the guilt they both felt lingered in the air. Over the next few days, their curiosity and growing fascination with the videos only deepened. They found ways to sneak into a room together and lock the door so they could continue watching. At first, it was just about satisfying their curiosity, but soon they found themselves drawn to the videos in a way they didn't fully understand. Day by day, things began to change between them. The cheerful shouts and playful games they used to share around the compound started to fade. The laughter and innocence that had defined their relationship were slowly replaced by a strange, uncomfortable silence. They could feel something pulling them toward each other, a force they couldn't explain. It wasn't the pure, innocent bond they had always shared as cousins. This feeling was deeper, darker, and confusing. It was a kind of pull that drew two people together as more than family, but neither of them fully understood it. They had never felt anything like it before, and it scared them. Khalid felt guilty about what they were doing. He knew deep down that it wasn't right. He tried to stop himself, to pull away, but the more he tried, the more he found himself drawn back into it. It was as if something had taken hold of him, and he didn't know how to break free. Both Amina and Khalid felt trapped by the secret they carried, but they couldn't tell anyone. Instead, they carried the weight of it silently, not knowing what to do or how to escape the growing tension between them. That Friday at the mosque, Amina and Khalid sat with their families for Jumu'ah prayer. Khalid found himself unable to focus on the khutbah. His eyes kept drifting to Amina, who sat with her mother and aunt in the women's section. He watched the way her headscarf framed her face, the grace in her movements, and he felt an unexplainable pull toward her. He tried to shake it off, but the feeling lingered throughout the prayer. After the prayer ended, and the families were leaving the mosque, Khalid caught up with Amina. As they walked together, keeping a respectful distance to avoid suspicion, Khalid leaned in slightly and whispered, "Amina, we'll try it out today after lunch when everyone's resting." Amina looked at him with wide eyes, her heart racing. "Are you sure, Khalid?" she asked nervously. "What if someone finds out?" "They won't," Khalid said confidently. "Everyone will be resting. We'll just be careful." Amina hesitated for a moment, but nodded slowly. Her curiosity had grown so much that she couldn't resist. She had stopped thinking about the consequences and focused only on the strange, unexplainable need to know more. Mrs. Fatima, Khalid's mother, returned home earlier than expected. She called out from the sitting room, "Khalid, have you cleaned the sitting room like I asked?" "Yes, Mama," Khalid replied, trying to sound calm. Amina and Khalid froze. They were shocked to hear her voice. They hadn't realized an adult was back in the house. Panic set in as they looked at each other, knowing they had been doing something they shouldn't have. Quickly, Khalid helped Amina sneak out of his room through the back door. As she left, they both felt uneasy. There was a heavy feeling in their hearts, as if they had crossed a line they couldn't step back over. Amina had never had to sneak around in the house before, and the guilt they both felt lingered in the air. Over the next few days, their curiosity and growing fascination with the videos only deepened. They found ways to sneak into a room together and lock the door so they could continue watching. At first, It was just about satisfying their curiosity, but soon they found themselves drawn to the videos in a way they didn't fully understand. That Friday at the mosque, after Jumu'ah prayer, Khalid sat with his family, but his mind wandered. He kept glancing at Amina, who sat with her mother and aunt in the women's section. Something about the way her hijab framed her face and how she carried herself caught his attention in a way it never had before. He tried to shake the thoughts away, but found himself staring. After the prayers, as they walked home together, Khalid leaned toward Amina and whispered, "Amina, we'll try it out today. Under your hijab." Amina froze for a moment, her heart racing. "What? Khalid, are you serious?" she asked, her voice shaky but curious. "Yes," Khalid replied confidently. "On our way home, there's an uncompleted building nearby. No one will see us." Amina hesitated, but her curiosity had grown too strong to resist. She nodded reluctantly. As they approached the uncompleted building, Khalid led the way, ensuring no one was watching. "Let's go inside," he said, pulling her arm gently. Once inside, Khalid looked at her. "Okay, just lift your hijab a little," he said nervously. Amina, her hands trembling, hesitated but eventually followed his instructions. They awkwardly tried to imitate what they had seen in the videos, fumbling and unsure of themselves. When they were done, Amina looked at Khalid with mixed emotions, part excitement, part confusion. "What now?" she asked softly. "We'll come here every day," Khalid said confidently, already planning their next visit. But Khalid's excitement was short-lived. As they left the building, he felt a heavy weight in his chest. Guilt began to creep in. "Amina," he said after a moment of silence, "I don't think we should do this again." Amina frowned. "Why? It's not like anyone will find out," she said quickly, brushing off his concerns. "No," Khalid said firmly, his voice filled with regret. "My conscience is judging me. This isn't right." Amina looked frustrated, but Khalid was resolute. Deep down, he felt the full weight of what they had done and knew it was wrong. Despite Amina's persistence, Khalid refused to go back to the uncompleted building with her. He fought the guilt that consumed him, while Amina seemed ready to continue. 2 weeks later, Amina suddenly fell ill. She was vomiting and feeling weak. Concerned, her mother, Mrs. Zainab, took her to the nearest clinic for a checkup. After examining her, the doctor called Mrs. Zainab into his office. "Are you her mother?" the doctor asked. "Yes, I am," Mrs. Zainab replied, her worry etched on her face. "What's wrong with my daughter?" The doctor hesitated briefly before saying, "Your daughter is 3 weeks pregnant." The words hit Mrs. Zainab like a thunderbolt. "This is not possible," she exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. The doctor remained calm. "Please, ma'am, take care of her. She and the baby will be fine." As they left the clinic, tears filled Amina's eyes. She was overwhelmed with shame and fear. One thought kept repeating in her mind. "How do I tell my mother that Khalid, my cousin, is the one responsible for my pregnancy?" Her heart felt heavy, and her silence only deepened as they walked back home. She couldn't imagine how her family would react if they found out the truth. Watch out for part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you'll be notified when we post the next part.